one of the advantages of this one is it can generate nicer numbers. If you go with 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and so on, it will have nicer sums in the end.
Yeah.
And I also think that, and also it is an order of magnitude really, because the step between 2 and 5 is kind of big. You can go with a 1, 2, 4, 8 scale. The important thing is that you use a fixed scale, and that it actually is sort of on order of magnitude scale, and then you also round up. That is one of the tools in your toolbox, toolbox you estimate. Like it's always worse to estimate too low than too high. Only here. All right. So, how do we go about estimating a feature? Well, here's one of our features. Administrators are notified when links are added. And we'll look at the solution. Use flag and rules modules to create a workflow. The workflow sets a newly created link node as unpublished. All right, so I just figured how long has this taken? Have I done it before? Well, I think it will take about 3 hours ideally. But 3 is not in the scale. It's 2 or 5, which means I have to go with 5 because I have to round up. So I set the feature to 5. Now, everything will not take 1, 2, or 5 hours to make. There are always things that take less and take more time. So that's why you can use factors, 0.1, 1, or 10. So the factors can be applied in such a way that you use different factors for different types of tasks. For example, changing or setting a configuration in Drupal would be like add a user reference to the article node type, which generally takes like 0.2 hours. Seldom more than that. Building functionality using Drupal's user interface. A view listing profile nodes and sorted based on the number of comments each has. Well, that will probably take more than an hour. And when it comes to developing new modules or themes, you would have to count the hours in 10, 20, or 50. That's the range they are. Write a module that posts the user's email address to the provider's REST API when the user registers. Like that. It's a feature that we would estimate around 10 hours. So when you have estimated all these different features, it's time to actually rate the solution, how well you know it, and that's when we take the uncertainty into account. Uncertainty in estimation comes from 2 things primarily: the requirements, how clear they are, the clarity of them. The refinement of the requirements will improve as the project progresses. I will show actually a diagram of this shortly. Secondly, whether you have done it in the past. Now, the clarity of the requirements, you can't control that. That is a client. You can make assumptions about them, which is what you do when you write a solution. And you can also know how well you know the solution, whether you've done the same thing before. And this also factors. So that means by first of all making assumptions, and secondly figuring out how you will build a site, you can actually get a sense of control. Yeah, I want to play with some keynote effects, and I had an excuse here, Yeah, it's not magic. That's the point. Right. So, what are some of the things that things that might be hard to take into account on service? For example, chaotic development. And chaotic development is characterized by requirements that weren't investigated very well. At this point, we don't have much of a choice. The client usually hands us a summary or an executive summary of what they say. Poor coding practices, which means you don't write. You're an inexperienced coder. You're probably not writing logical function or variable names. You share code with others. You don't work consistently. Inexperienced personnel, if you estimate a project for one of your experienced staff and you put a junior developer on it, it will most certainly take longer time. There's something you need to be aware of. Incomplete or unskilled project planning. Basically not taking everything into consideration or making an unrealistic project plan. We prefer working with agile practices like Scrum and XP if possible. Abandoning planning and progress. We usually have to deliver the site. There's now, you just work late hours and you basically throw everything out the window just to deliver something. I think we've all been there. It's not nice, and you're happy you get a second line, but you know what's going on under your hood, and you're not proud of it, but it works. Developer gold plating, like basically putting more effort into something that's really expected. Developers are often perfectionists. I interview developers for positions with us, and it's like I ask them, are you a perfectionist? And almost everyone is a perfectionist. Those with more experience, they realize that perfectionism is not a good. It's not useful in this kind of job. You need to draw the line somewhere and realize what the client wants and what's good enough. And lack of automated source code control. Like, how many here are doing like Git or CVS or Subversion? Right, good. Right, and those of you who don't, you really should. Seriously. Like, there are a couple of things in the world that takes like half a day to learn, in the world of Drupal, and they will save time the rest of your life. Git is one thing. jQuery is one thing. And regular expressions, like put in the time you need to learn these things. You're gonna get it back 100, 1,000 times over. Then there's also the overlooked activities. These will also add to your estimate. They include migration of data, migrating data from another site, or importing data. These things take a lot of time. You should never do them in fixed. We never do them in fixed. We always basically do them on running account. And there's a good reason for that, because usually the time it takes to do something depends on the quality of data the client provides. If you basically put it on a running account, the client will work hard to provide data to you, which takes less time for you to implement. If you take all the risk, they can just hand you whatever they have, and it's not their problem. So that gives them an incitement, a reason to provide good data and keep the process fast and flowing. Producing help and documentation. Almost every site needs some form of documentation. You will put it in code, you will write notes, you will write some sort of manual. This takes time. So take that into account. Deployment, often overlooked. You actually have to set up a server. You have to put things in a repository. You have to check it out. Maybe you're using Hudson or some kind of continuous integration solution. Same thing here. You have to set these things up, and it actually has to be put in a server and needs to run. You need to maybe do security updates. By the time you release, it will take time. Integrating third-party systems. Third-party systems are really scary. They are, if possible, should be handled as separate projects. You should not include them. You should basically, if it's a major integration, you should put it separately, and you should actually put the time just to understand the interface and figuring out a solution. Or working with a third party. For example, imagine that the client wants you to interface with a design agency, and they're not very skilled or used to the web. You have to take into account how much time they will take, and either do a running account or put enough time on the side enough to take that into account.
Are you saying that on your estimate, you list these separately and say these are just going to be what they are?
Some of these things we'll list separately. I'll show you shortly how it works. Some of them are just things that will be you will have to include them in your feature estimate. But we try to keep our features as ideal as possible, and all overhead time we add extra. We specify it. It's better for the client. It's clearer to see. Some things the client will assume, which are important, but they're understood. They're implicit. Performance. They want a site that runs fast, and they may not write it out, they may not specify it, but if their site is slow, they're not going to be happy. So performance is important, and that's scalable infrastructure, writing code that's now when it comes to writing code that is effective, you should never do optimization early on. That is a cardinal sin.